Hi. Now this story came to pass many years ago. My name is Kalo Ikagwo, and I am going to tell you a story called Olusegun and Nothing. So please listen very well, because there are many lessons to be learned from this story. Olusegun and Nothing were very good friends. Even though, that is, Olusegun was very poor and Nothing was very rich. Olusegun lived down an unkept path that led to a small hut, while Nothing lived down a well-maintained path with rows of striking flowers on each side that led to a huge palace. Strangely enough, both houses were built almost side by side. Yes, Olusegun and Nothing were neighbors. With a neighbor and a good friend like Nothing, Olusegun really didn't want for much, because whenever he was in desperate need, Nothing always helped him. In spite of his kindness, Olusegun was green-eyed with envy. He was very jealous of Nothing. Now the two were as yet unmarried, so one evening they decided to go together to a nearby town to look for wives. "Tomorrow, as soon as the sun begins to rise in the sky," said Olusegun, "let us meet at the fork in the road that leads one part to my house and then the other to yours." That's a fine idea," replied Nothing. The two were laughing heartily as they bade each other good night and went home. In the morning, the two met at the fork in the road. Even at first light, one could see that Nothing was wearing splendid clothes befitting a man of his great wealth. He had fine leather shoes on, perfect trousers and shirts made from the finest cotton, possibly Egyptian, and to top it all, he wore the most luxurious red velvet coat. He looked very grand. Olusegun, on the other hand, wore drab clothes. The whites were more grey than white. The blues were more black than blue. And the reds, not worth mentioning. These were once clothes that Nothing had given and bought for Olusegun. But Olusegun, as with most of his possessions, hadn't bothered looking after them. "What a beautiful morning!" exclaimed Nothing on seeing his friend. "Indeed, it is, my brother," responded Olusegun with the best smile he could muster. With that, Nothing mounted his beautiful white stallion and Olusegun his thin grey horse. And they began their journey to the city to look for suitable women to choose as wives. To see the two ride by, you would have thought that even though they were an odd couple, they regarded each other equally. Friend to friend, man to man. But all was not well with Olusegun. You see, even though he was laughing and chatting with his face so bright, his heart was dark. "Nothing," said Olusegun. "You're looking so fine on your white horse, dressed in your expensive clothes. See how everybody is just looking at you as we ride by. What a fantastic feeling that must be." Nothing, in all honesty, and being very humble in character, answered his friend. "You know, it's only now that you mention it that I notice people are actually looking at all," he said with some surprise in his voice. "Wouldn't it be wonderful if we lived in a world where people judge the person by their character not by the finery of the attire, as I do you, and you do me. Yes, very true, nothing. But all the same, it's you that all these people are looking at. How I wish I could experience that feeling, just one time, to be, center of attention. With that, cleverly, Olusegun changed the subject for a moment by talking about the weather. But it was not long after before he said again, nothing. I would so much like to be looked at the way these people are looking at you, Would you consider lending me your horse and your fine clothes? Just so until we reach the outskirts of the town, at which point I shall return them to you. Nothing was a bit taken aback by this request. I mean, he had done many favors for his friend in the past, but this was a stranger so far. Olusegun, however, kept pestering nothing until at last he agreed. Oh, Olusegun, yes, I'll lend you my horse and my clothes till we reach the outskirts of the town. But you must promise me that there we will change back horse, clothes before we enter the town. Do I have your word? Oh, my friend! I don't deserve all this kindness from you. I promise. We shall ride our own horses and wear our own clothes as soon as we enter the town, Olusegun responded, enthusiastically. With the oath taken, the men swapped horses and clothes and changed. And that was it. Now, as I can imagine, it didn't take long before all the attention went to Olusegun's head. Riding the white stallion, he felt on top of the world. Nothing noticed this change in Olusegun's behavior and became a little concerned. He began to wonder if Olusegun would indeed be prepared to give him back his horse and clothes as they had agreed. As they reached the outskirts of the city, nothing reminded Olusegun that it was time for them to exchange horse and clothes as agreed. Outrightly, Olusegun said, look, I am not going to keep that promise of mine. You're a fool to have believed me. I am enjoying this attention, and I shall enjoy it more as we enter the town. This is my time to shine, so leave me to it. Nothing was taken aback by his friend's angry response. He was forced to hold his tongue. Strangers in the area were noticed quickly, so it didn't take long before word spread that the two men were in town hoping to select girls from good families that they could take as wives. Within the hour, Olusegun had more than 100 offers from wealthy fathers pleading with him to choose their daughters. Hey, see that fine white horse, said one. Yes, must be one of those stallions from our Arab brothers, responded another very knowledgeably. Oh, see his red velvet coat, one woman exclaimed. He has money, agreed all of them. In the same hour, not one person spoke to nothing. Not one family chose to introduce their daughter to him. Olusegun had chosen two very beautiful girls to take as his wives. He married them quickly and was ready to begin the journey home, promising the girls' fathers that he would send their dowry money in a day or two. Not one family complained about this arrangement. Olusegun is clearly a man of great wealth and therefore a man that would obviously keep his word. They conceded. A poor old woman had been watching all that had been happening. She took pity on nothing and introduced him to her daughter. She was pretty, respectful, and modest. So, Nothing agreed to take her as his wife. Now, the old woman was pleasantly surprised when Nothing dug into his drab clothing and pulled out a wad of money and settled her dowry right away. The two men, with their wives, began their journey home. Neither man spoke to the other. If you had seen them now, you'd have wondered how it came to be that such a poor man was in the company of such a wealthy man. Olusegun was so carried away by his supposed new status, he quite forgot he would be found out when they got home. He had tricked nothing out of his horse and his clothes, but as yet, not his house. It was only the women who spoke. Olusegun's two wives could be hearing ridiculing the fate of Nothing's wife. She married a pooper, said one to the other, laughing. Look at his door clothes, said one to the other. Both Nothing and his wife heard all the comments. Their journey home continued. As the sun set, the travelers came to the fork in the road that leads one path to the house of Olusegun and the other to the house of Nothing. Olusegun and Nothing stopped, but the women continued. Naturally, Olusegun's wives followed the tidy, well-maintained path with rows of striking flowers on one side that led to a huge palace, while Nothing's wife, as you would expect, followed the uncut, unkempt path that led to a hut. Nothing was the first to speak. "Ladies," he said with great authority in his voice, "you, both of you, walk the wrong path." My dear wife," he said as he pointed to his palace, "this is a path to your house." And to the others, he said graciously, "This path, I'm afraid, is the one to your house." As Nothing pointed them in the direction of the uncut, unkempt path that led to the hut, Olusegun's wives gasped. The two men, in complete silence, changed back both the horse and the clothes and led their wives along the path to their proper homes. As Nothing escorted his wife to their palace, the servants came out and lined the path. The drummers were drumming and singing praises, and many were dancing. They were well and truly welcomed home. Along the path that led to Olusegun's home, well, things were a little different. The mood was bleak. No one was speaking now. How things have changed. In a few days, Nothing's wife was regarded as the most important woman in the area. Nothing made sure she had all her heart's desires and much, much more met. At Olusegun's house, on the other hand, his wives were complaining bitterly. They hardly had enough to eat. And the little they could eat was almost rotten because that's the only thing they could afford to buy from the market. And to make things worse, their families were sending messages every day, inquiring about the unpaid dowries. And this, dear children, is an important lesson to learn. It is not always so that a man of great wealth will obviously be a man that will keep his word. Nothing's wife heard of Olusegun's wife's situation and, being kind, invited them both to a great feast at her house. So impressed were Olusegun's wives with the food and the house and the entire surroundings that they begged Nothing's wife that they should be allowed to stay and work for her if possible. She agreed, and word was sent to Olusegun that they would not be going ever again back to his house. Olusegun was in a thunderous and dangerous mood, more jealous and hateful of nothing now than he had ever been. He began to hatch a plan. At the dead of night, Olusegun made his way to the fork in the road that led one path to his house and the other to Nothing's house. Here, he dug a deep hole. And in this hole, he placed shards of sharp objects, each one pointing its end upwards, the sharp end upwards. And then he covered the hole with branches and twigs so well, it looked like a hole didn't even exist there at all. Satisfied with his ghastly work, he walked to Nothing's house. "Nothing!" he shouted. "I have come to beg for your forgiveness." The whole household stared. "Yes, I know it's the middle of the night, but there's no time like the present to make amends." Nothing's wife pleaded with him not to listen to Olusegun. After almost an hour of Olusegun's pleading and insistence calling out, Nothing shouted back, "Olusegun, why all this noise? You've woken up my whole household." "Fine, I'm coming out." "Oh, thank you, my friend. Please meet me at the fork in that road that we know so well," he said. A look so strange in his eyes, sly like a demon's eye. Nothing hurriedly dressed up and went out to meet his friend, out in the dark. Nothing, arriving at the fork in the road, even with the light he was carrying, couldn't see Olusegun. He called out, "Olusegun, where are you?" "Over here, a little further down the road," came the reply. Nothing walked towards the voice, his lantern held high. "Yes, I see your light," said Olusegun. This way, he hissed. And then it happened. Nothing heard a crunch and started falling downwards. Surprised, he hastily stretched his hand and grabbed a tree root, his lantern falling into the hole. And it lit the abyss. Nothing could see the sharp points of glass and metal that Olusegun had sneakily placed in the hole, all the sharp edges pointing upwards. Too late, he realized it was a trap. Then he heard Olusegun's voice above him. He looked up to see Olusegun glaring wildly at him. At last, he said. "All these years I've pretended to be your friend just so I could benefit from your kindness. You gave me this, you gave me that. I didn't want some of it," he said. "I wanted all of it." Realizing the awful situation, he was nothing new. He had only one option. With his free hand, he grabbed his old friend's ankle. "Then you will go with me," he shouted at Olusegun as he pulled his ankle downwards. Olusegun felt the earth shift slightly, then a little bit more, and then give way all together under him. He managed one last exclamation. "Yeah!" Two men fell together in a strange embrace, hugging each other, just as friends do when they meet each other after not seeing each other for a long time. After a while, as Nothing had not returned home, a search party was sent to look for him. It didn't take very long for them to reach the hole in the road and were met with the sight of both men, quite lifeless at the bottom of the pit. It was obvious to everyone that this was more of Olusegun's evil work, but that it had gone wrong for him as well. This great sadness spread throughout the district at the news of this terrible incident. All were heartbroken at the loss of nothing. Such a good, patient, and kind man. Effectively, nothing was spoken of Olusegun. With much sadness, Nothing's wife asked that 500 tubers of yam be boiled and 500 fish be fried. And when all was ready, she walked far and wide, giving portions of the food to every child she saw, and asked the children to help her cry for her husband. And that is why, even today, when you find a child crying and ask the cause, you will often be told that they are crying for nothing. The moral of the story is, evil deeds, like chickens, always come home to roost. My name is Carlo Ikagwo, and I hope you enjoyed today's story. See you again some other time.